Good evening and welcome. It is All for United. We are back once again. It's midweek and it's an international break, which can only mean one thing. We've got to start thinking about something different to talk about other than just the football. So we're going to throw ourselves in there with a return, a sequel. They often say the sequel is not as good as the first one. We shall see whether or not that's the case today, because I think it's going to be really, really good. We have got three excellent attendees to our little shindig this evening, one of whom you'll always know. We've got Mr. Andrew Wall just over my shoulder there, and of course we've got Daz, who we have seen a handful of times now, so he's been here time and time again. But we've also got just below us a brand new person, a newbie, another person that we've managed to find whilst hunting around on TikTok to see some of the best creators, especially up and coming ones, talking regularly about Manchester United. And Ben is here tonight to join us. Lovely to have you, Ben. How are you doing, sir? Everything okay?
Good, yeah, all good. Excited to get into some good detailed conversations. You don't get much chance really on TikTok to get much sensible talk out of some people, so it's good to get involved in a bit more long form stuff.
Absolutely. Well, we do love a bit of sensible talk, so we shall see whether or not that occurs this evening, or if it just descends into chaos. You can never tell. And of course, Daz, like I say, over there, how are you doing, sir? Everything okay with you?
I'm good. I'm good, thank you. Staying positive. This is an awkward. I actually saying this morning, I love international football. I love the international break. I just don't like it 3 games after the season started, because if you're doing really well, you could lose momentum, and sometimes, a bit like Manchester United. Manchester United obviously have had some teething issues, but I've got to wait until after the international break to fix them, which sometimes the gap's good, because hopefully by the time the international break's finished, we'll have a couple of players back. But, I just don't think it's necessary. So I try and stay quite positive for the next couple of weeks. But yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're okay. I'm like you. I don't mind the internationals. I suppose England aren't even playing those, but it's another one of those where there's lots of football going on. But unless you're Connor and you have a bit of Scotland, you're not really too fussed about it. So it's not a lot for us to be looking at. But it's a bit of time for all the drama to just calm down, I suppose. And of course, you're Andrew as well. So Andrew, quickly, we'll just ask you as well, are you okay, sir? What's going on? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm all right after the embarrassment that was Sunday. So some way the international break, just there's time just to get over it. At least, we've got another week and a bit until the next United game. But yeah, it wasn't great Sunday being there. So one to forget it was.
Indeed. And of course, there could have been loads of chat about Liverpool in the discussion tonight, but we haven't. We've come up with 4 different topics. If you've been on Twitter already, or X, whatever we've got to call it nowadays, we have gone through the 4 topics. But we'll be kicking off with the people that you saw in. Oh, what's this box? Oh, tight. I'm glad there's an international break. Means no more defeats for United this weekend. Well, there is that. Absolutely. Can't argue with that, I suppose. And BD, lovely to see you too. So we are going to start with those very people on the thumbnail. Casemiro and Antony. 2, I suppose, very different sorts of polarizing characters at the moment. It's interesting. I was just scrolling through TikTok while eating my dinner, funnily enough, just to see what was on the chat at that precise moment in time. And it was an old video from Jamie Carragher with 3 games left of the season last season. And he was talking about how Casemiro should basically have 3 more games left at the top level, go on, win a cup, and then disappear and go off to Saudi and do all of that sort of thing. And I found it interesting because initially when I heard it, I thought this was him talking about him again post the Liverpool game, but obviously it wasn't. And I thought to myself, Casemiro had 2 really good games at the start of the season. He looked like the Casemiro of old. He looked like he was ready to to really work hard. And I can't work out whether or not it was just Liverpool that humbled him and he just didn't have the legs to play against a team like Liverpool, or if it was a case that he really is just at a point where he can't do something like that 3 matches in a row, and he's only going to be able to be more of an impact player that you can bring on every once in a while to help you out. But then when you take that and you look aside to Antony, you think this is a guy who was bought for 80 million, had fanfare, was going to be somebody who was really, really good down that right-hand side. And I think a lot of people got on top of him. And as a result of that, his confidence seems to disappear. That flair that he had to do that 360 dribble, just got rid of all that. Everybody just knocked it out of him. And I don't feel like we would have done that with someone like a Ronaldo or someone like that. We want to see that exciting, attacking flair. And I wondered at what point we decided we don't want to see that anymore. So I was a little bit frustrated having looked at those two players. And I started to think, is there a possibility? Is there a way for these two players to help us this season? Or are they basically going to be the scapegoats? A little bit like Rashford has been over the course of the last few years, just the person that we're going to blame it all on. Because Scott McTominay's gone now. So we can't be sitting there and having a go at Scott McTominay for being brought in at the centre of midfield. We're in a situation where these players are leaving. Varane's gone. He can't be whinged at anymore. Maguire is imperious most of the time that he plays at the moment, so he's not going to get it. So are we now hitting a situation where we've just got to have these people that are going to be the scapegoats, and they're always the ones that are going to get shouted at? So I just kind of wanted to find out what we think. Because I'm wondering, Ugarte might come in and Casemiro will drop down. And then that'll be a case that maybe Casemiro comes in and plays things like Carabao Cup, maybe the odd FA Cup game if it's against lower league opposition, that sort of thing. But then he wouldn't be up there against the likes of a PSG, an Arsenal, a Liverpool, and that would have a more preferred Premier League side. But then equally with Antony, Diallo looks like he's going to be the one to play in there. Garnacho can play there. If we're lucky, if he's lucky even, we might only see him for a couple of minutes. So I'm really intrigued to know what you guys think about those two players and to whether or not they've got a serious future at this football club. So, Daz, I think we'll go to you first on this one, because I'm intrigued to see what your thoughts are. You said you were remaining positive, and I kicked off with a fairly negative comment. So, what do you reckon?
I think in terms of Antony, I think sometimes the fans speak for everybody. And I think, although, I mean, we mentioned a couple of podcasts ago when I mentioned how the fans just hated the first sign that he showed that flair in his debut game, where he did the spin and, lost the ball straight away. That I honestly believe that little spin was the source of his confidence. And in that one game, he just wanted to show it off, and the fans hated it. And he was then publicly told by Erik ten Hag he can't do it again. Has that had a big impact on his confidence to the point that we've seen a failed transfer, and we're now at the point where the fans are just, we don't want him there because he's just become a liability and he isn't productive? I think my biggest worry is we're seeing the same thing with Casemiro, but I'm all up for holding players responsible and making them be accountable, because did some of them passes that Casemiro gave away, I don't care if you're at the end of your career, he should have enough level of experience not to be making mistakes at that level. Maybe you can't run as fast, maybe you can't run as far, maybe you can't play so many games. That's a sign of age, but giving passes away like that is just not acceptable. So I think Erik ten Hag made the right decision, subbed him off against Liverpool, and they made a decision, but obviously he's going to be here until Christmas. I do believe that regardless of what happens, Ugarte starts the next game. One, because he's a new signing, and two, because after that sort of shit show that we saw against Liverpool, Casemiro can't play the next game. Does that then mean, like you mentioned, that we then be very selective in the way that we use Casemiro? Because I actually thought he looked quite good against Fulham, thought he looked quite good against Man City, and I thought he looked quite good against Brighton. Definitely better than last year. And can he be used very selectively, in the right games, and Ugarte just becomes that number one CDM? Maybe then Casemiro finds that confidence of old and maybe pushes Ugarte back out the team later in the season. But Yeah, I think personally, I think with you, if Ugarte comes in and he does a good job, I think Manchester United should look to move him on in January, and it looks as if he'll probably get a move. Somebody said to me today, nobody had ever paid 350k a week for him. His name's Casemiro. He's the most decorated player currently playing in Europe. I'm sure Saudi will pay more than 350k a week for him, just because of his name. So I'm not going to throw any player under the bus, but he does deserve to be benched. For me, that's just got to be a level that the manager needs to say. And I think we saw that against Liverpool. He said that this is the level that our players will play at. If you fall below that, you're coming off. I don't care if it's half time. And he made that, and he subbed him off for an academy player. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's just gonna sit and wait. I think Casemiro could be useful for us this season, but only used selectively. I can't see him being that main man in that midfield anymore.
Which I suppose to a degree you would kind of expect. Ben, let's come over to you and get your thoughts as you break into our own first team just here. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's always an argument for it. Harry Maguire, I think, was maligned a lot because of the fact he was an £80 million defender. People looked at the price tag and therefore they were measuring him up against that. If he'd been a £30-40 million defender, I'm not convinced he'd have had quite as much hatred as he's got. Do you think that's the same thing for Antony? He's looking there at an £80 million price tag and people are thinking, it's a bit like when you go and buy something and you paid 100 quid for it and you think it's only worth a tenner. It's not going to be so great. Is that kind of where we've gone with him? And with Casemiro, it's an age thing. I can remember Roy Keane having to drop further and further back as he got older and older because his legs just couldn't carry him up and down as often as he'd want to. So he's kind of had to conserve that energy. But Casemiro's only like 32, 33, isn't he? I mean, we're talking about him as if he's 75 and going to be withdrawing his pension next week. He's still fitter than probably all of us stood here together and could probably beat us in a race. So what do you think about him?
Yeah, I think it's interesting with Antony because, like you say, if you look at the price tag and you compare that to, say, whoever it might be coming through, like a Diallo or Garnacho who's playing, you could possibly say if he'd come in for 20-30 million, you're looking at him and thinking, he's fine. His output in that first season, what he did in the games, he does work hard off the ball and stuff like that, which tactically Ten Hag does want. So I think that type of player for 20-30 million, you could probably get away with and accept. But as we know with United, a lot of these signings are way over the mark. I think it came out in an article saying that we'd valued Antony at about 25 million at the time, but we still managed to pay up to 80 million for him, which was, at the time, I think it was purely out of desperation to get someone in. That's not on us. That's not on Antony. That's on the club. But ultimately, when I watch him play, I don't see the type of ability that I see from Garnacho and Diallo. I'll let them players off. Diallo looks so much more secure on the ball. He looks so much more engaged with the game. He knows what he's trying to do. Whereas Antony, it felt like he got into a rhythm of cutting inside and putting the ball over the bar, which it's difficult to see a player kind of go through that, but it went on for so long, similar to what's happening with Rashford. It's got to the point where we're all looking at him thinking he's kind of not going to ever do it. And Casemiro, I think he's different end of his career. We've seen this with United players before. We've seen United players where their legs have gone. But I think Casemiro has a use to the squad in terms of when you look at the game against Fulham. I was at that game and I thought he missed a few chances, but in them types of games, you can possibly get away with it. And I think he does have a level of quality on the ball. He didn't show that against Liverpool. He needs to be played further up the pitch. You look at that Liverpool game, he's the first man getting the ball off the defence, which both of the goals have come from that because his decision-making wasn't good enough or he didn't have the legs to get away from Diaz. And I think ultimately, if Ten Hag can work out a system where he's playing further up the pitch or you've got an Ugarte alongside him who can cover all of the spaces, I do think Casemiro's got space.
I think I can't disagree with that. It seems pretty fair. But I suppose, Andrew, the same sort of thing for you there on that one, because Ben's just brought it up. Antony didn't decide the price tag. Harry Maguire didn't decide the price tag. They're just players that are coming in and trying to do the best that they can. It's a bit unfair for us to be having to go at them because of how much they've cost, isn't it? It's not us doing it. It's like when I go and buy petrol from the petrol station, it's vastly overpriced. It shouldn't cost as much as it costs. But I'm not going to shout at the petrol for it, am I? I'm not putting it in there shouting at the petrol pump going, for God's sake, why are you costing me so much money? That's not done it. The petrol just does its job. It takes me where I've got to go. I should be able to go to Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Asda or Esso or whichever company it is that's absolutely ripping my wallet to shreds. So why do we insist on having to go at the players who, I'm sure for both of them, including Antony, are putting their effort fully into the game, but because of a price tag that they can't control, are absolutely just in trouble?
I think with the price tag comes expectation of what we want to have the best players. Like with Antony at the moment, he's facing a fight to get back in the first team, and his chances are going to be very limited. Think back to last season, he started the opening game of the season, and now he's lucky to see where he's going to get his game time. So, like the Community Shield just gone, he was an unused substitute. As you know, he said in an interview, "I promised to deliver goals and assists," but he can only do that if he's going to get on the pitch, and he's facing a real fight to do that at the moment. And so you just think, Antony, like last season, contributed the crucial equaliser in the FA Cup win over Liverpool. The cross for the Garnacho goal against Chelsea, but his highlights, in his career so far have been, few and far between. You could argue now Antony's no longer part of the United's best 11. He didn't even play a single minute in the FA Cup final. So, and you could say it's no coincidence. Ahmad's got ahead of him now, and he's getting the first team chances, as you saw in pre-season. Ahmad just looks a better play. It's like when he's on the ball, he's more unpredictable with it. He's two-footed and dangerous in front of goal. Whereas Antony, you sort of know what he's going to do. He's going to get down the byline, cut in, and either try and shoot it towards goal or put a cross in. So you've got to be a bit more dynamic in his play as well. But with Garnacho on the right as well, Antony's now down the pecking order. So it's a lack of game time for him now. It's going to make it difficult to him to get him and get any form. So, like I say, he still has a lot to offer. So, there's still going to be chances throughout the season, like rotation in the Europa League. You might play in the Carabao Cup against Barnsley, but to me, he's already missed the opportunity to get back into the first team. But I think last season, Ten Hag put him a left back position for a couple of games, but I don't think Antony liked it, and he pretty much said that. But that was an opportunity for him to, could have cemented his place in, a bit like what Antonio Valencia did all those years ago. He was naturally a winger, but he sort of became a wing back, so bombing up and down the wing, attacking and defending as well. So, but it just question marks over Antony, whether reports he was going to go, but he doesn't want to go. A bit like Casemiro, wanting transfers involving both of them, but they don't want to move on. And just on Casemiro, because watching him Sunday was just, I think I said in our WhatsApp group, it was, somebody called it a Hall of Shame display. But Casemiro is a problem, but there's many problems at United. So I said, Ngate can't start soon enough, but Ten Hag sort of played down the immediate impact he can have as well. So, but he should be an improvement on Casemiro. But just Casemiro, just as you said, the first couple of games, he looked all right, but and we did look fairly competitive in the Liverpool game. But then Casemiro gave the balls away, and it led to the goals. And I'm not just singling him out; the whole team did a bad job. It's the defending as well from all the defence didn't help as well. So, but it just, I think Rio Ferdinand said it as well. It feels like Casemiro's being asked to do too much, like dictate the pace of the game, put 30-yard balls over, and just like when he was at Real Madrid, he had Modric and Toni Kroos with him, so he just had to do the defensive duty. He let the other two be the creative players, but Casemiro, his first season was just brilliant, and I just look for what he did for us, and it just seems like he's just been on the slide. And I don't know whether, like Antony, is not going to be a regular starter anymore, but say Ngate should be an improvement. But I'm just thinking with the international break, some of those players coming back from South America, I'm just like, it's not going to be much time for Ngate. Is he going to start against Southampton? I'm not so sure. So, yeah, it's say Casemiro's a problem, but it's part of many problems, as I just said.
And I'm not going to lie, Andrew, if he doesn't start, I'm going to be very, very surprised. Because these are the sort of games where you would want to blood a new signing in. It seems a bit mad to me that you'd go, we'll wait until we've got a Liverpool, an Arsenal, a City. You're not going to throw them in that game. Give them a chance to get used to the pace of the Premier League. And in that game, it makes complete sense. Box, very interesting point as we finish off on this one. Sancho and Antony have both played 83 games for United. Sancho scored 12. Antony scored 11. So Sancho's gone.
I think as well, though, Barry, it's important. I know we'll discuss the anti-United agenda later in the show, but mentioning the Antony price tag, the world's gone mental because he's not been a productive footballer and he costs 70-odd million pound, but Jack Grealish that cost 100 million that is less productive in terms of goals and assists seems to be protected. Seems to still get in the England team. I know he didn't go to the Euros, but he's instantly back in the England team as we speak. And where's the consistency from the media, from the pundits, equally criticising players, not just because they play for Manchester United. And I do believe, from an Antony point of view, part of the anti-Manchester United agenda has impacted him, same as it did with Harry Maguire. I mean, I think the fact that other players have done worse and not even been mentioned for different clubs, especially clubs, leading clubs, and the minute a Man United player, puts his foot wrong, Antony and Maguire included, even Casemiro now, everybody just wants to make a big thing out of it. But actually, players not performing or buying a new winger for X amount of pounds and being not productive, it's quite common in football. I mean, Liverpool's got one called Darwin Núñez. People stop talking about him. Gakpo, every team's got one that was sort of bought for too much, that isn't performing well enough, but nobody's talking about them players. And I do think that does affect these players at Manchester United, the fact that they're always the butt of the joke.
Yeah, that'd be. Our sign on North United for that one would be Dan, probably. Not quite putting his weight enough. I'm going to see if he's watching. If he is, at some point, I'll get a text about that. If he hasn't, then I'll be able to tell him off for not watching the shows. But there we go. So, right, I think we need to press on with that. And Andrew, we are going to come over to you in just a second, but this chap's written about this guy twice. Have you seen the news about the young centre midfielder Walsall Vaughan United are looking at signing? No, I haven't. That was why I ignored the comment in the first place. But if you can provide me more information about that, I'll go away and look at it, and maybe we'll talk about it another time. But then we are going to come to you. It talks here about the team needs a bit of a shuffle before the next game. We have Southampton away and Palace, both potential 3-pointers. If we can get the Liverpool game out of our minds and focus. I don't know why I brought that up to talk to you about that, because that's going to be Andrew's one that we're talking about. But we're going to you. So I'm going to ignore that and pretend that I've seamlessly done a brilliant thing and ask you. We don't usually talk about Bruno. Why are we talking about him today?
This is one that's been on my mind for a bit, really, in terms of I watch Bruno Fernandes, I see him get his contract extension, I look at all of that, and I think he is our best player. He's arguably our most talented player alongside Kobbie Mainoo. But I do have concerns going forward, looking at the system we're trying to play, looking at what I think Ten Hag is trying to work the team towards. And I look at what Bruno does and I think, does he need to change his role? Does he need to change what he's doing? And by that, I mean, I feel like he needs to come deeper, picking the ball up and then playing his passes from there. We see a lot of issues with the press when Mason Mount's not playing, aka against Liverpool, and when Bruno's leading that press in terms of it's quite scattergun. I think if you watch the games against Brighton and Fulham, although we weren't we weren't particularly good in certain elements of the game. The press was good, undeniably, in them games. And I think that was because Bruno had Mason Mount helping him and guiding him through that. As mad as that sounds, that Mason Mount, who's barely played, is guiding Bruno to how to press. And I think just on the ball, if we're trying to dictate the play, you look at the way Arsenal are set up, you look at the way Man City are set up, you look at the way Slot's trying to set up Liverpool. A lot of teams are moving to this system where you're retaining the ball, you're passing, your passes are more tempo passes, setting the pace of the game, which, regardless of how many chances Bruno Fernandes creates, that is not what he does. But I believe he's got it in him to do it because his range of passing is that good that he could easily drop play, pick up the ball from a Martinez, pick up the ball from a Yoro, De Ligt, turn, and then play the balls from there. The big issue with that is, does he have the discipline to do that?
Well, it'll be very interesting to see. I don't know how much pay in this chat, but he's straight in here. Joe P. Ben talks sort of sense. Get him on again. I quite agree.
I do know Joe is a Sheffield United fan, unfortunately.
Got a Sheffield United fan in. Oh, yeah. we do this. We attract people from other clubs. I'm not quite sure how they get in. The bouncer's obviously not doing his job. It's all good. We're happy to have you here. Andrew, what do you think? Is Bruno going to have to change?
Will Bruno want to change? I'm just thinking, I think they've asked him this about with Ten Hag being in charge, would he need to tweak his style of play? But I think he's appeared very defensive, whether he needs to, alter his style of play as well. And I think watching Bruno as well, the question is understandable. Sometimes he has been loose in possession of the ball, but as he's pointed out, he's trying to make things happen for the team. With his ambitious use of the ball, and when it works. But and it's worked a lot of times. But there's those few times where he's let the ball go, and it's just like you can hear the groans in Old Trafford. But every other player does it as well. So you just look at since he's been at United as well. I think Kevin De Bruyne has created more chances than he has. So them two are like out on their own. But you could say that Bruno surrenders the ball more than most. I think since his debut, I think only Trent Alexander-Arnold's lost the ball more times. But he's just with Fernandes. He's trying to, while he's got the ball in his possession, he's trying to attempt those more angled passes, and cut through balls through the central areas. Sometimes it seems like he's trying to, produce the fancy pass when it's simply not on. But it just shows his game has not changed since day one. He's arrived at United, so it's just like I don't think he's going to change now. But say he's not looking at his stats. He's not losing any more than he used to. So just I think in the years to come, I think he's going to drop back in terms of his role. So he's going to play like Paul Scholes, the quarterback role. So I just remember the Liverpool game, the FA Cup. Well, he's not saying he's going to become a defender, but he was literally virtually back in the defence, and pulling the strings and orchestrating it all. So I think creating chances, I don't think that's diminished, but it's those teammates in front of him have not put the ball away. That's not helped him either as well. So, but I think, as he said, Bruno's been defiant and he's optimistic. He doesn't need to adapt his game as well. Just maybe Ten Hag's, maybe saying take more greater care of the ball as well. But we'll see in the years to come whether he does or not. But I just think Bruno's Bruno, and he'll play the way he wants to play as captain of United.
Box has just thrown out here. Bruno, new left back. That is a damn shout. I never heard him.
I don't know. A bit like Wayne Rooney. He said he'd play anywhere on the pitch. If you told him to go and goal for United, he would have. And I think Bruno would do the same. He'd just play all over the pitch if it helped the team out.
Bit mad. We usually do the shout outs at the end, but Ginger has asked. Again, big fans of you being here. So do you want to just shout out your TikTok now so that you can go and scurry away and do that and feel content and happy?
I think it's Ben Talks Football, but I'm not sure what the actual tagline is.
I'll tell you what, Talks Football. Ben's going to check that before the end of the show just to be absolutely sure he's giving you the right information.
We'll do that.
then we'll know. But that's all good. Do you know, I kind of agree. I think it's a really interesting one because there was a good shout put here by NT that I can't disagree with as well. It's also that he hasn't had a proper number 9 to pick out. And I think the beginning of this year, I mean, it's been my argument in our group chat for a long time that we just seem toothless up front. And I just wonder, has he been in a situation where he doesn't really have that target? He doesn't have the ability to put a ball in somewhere. Or if he is getting a ball across, it's not making a difference. It's only going out wide, and then that ball's just being pulled back, and the chances are being squandered. He had the opportunity right at the very beginning. You think about the Fulham game, he played very well, but again, a couple of opportunities, didn't take them. And again, I think he is a confidence player. It was when I saw the question, I've got to be very honest, it really made me think, because football's evolving. It always will. It will always change. It's never just going to stay still. You're not the same player when you start football and end football. You've changed, usually across many different iterations. You look at Alex Ferguson, he was building team after team after team every 4, 5, 6 years. He had to change and move with the way that football was evolving. And that's very much the case here. So it may well be that United have got to make some form of change. You know, that Dan and the rest of us have spoken a bit about changing the formation, maybe having 3 at the back rather than playing with the 4. And I don't know if Bruno would be able to do that. For me, it all depends on what we're doing with the attack. My big argument this season so far has been we're trying to sort out the defence. And we're doing that because we're not having as many shots on target, many shots against us. We're conceding, hemorrhaging them, 20, 30 shots in a game. Now it's down to sort of 10, 15. So we're doing that bit. My hope is that we're really going to start to see him now getting the likes of Ruud van Nistelrooy and really finesse that end product and where people need to be in order to be able to go and score their goals. And if that's the case, then I'm hopeful we're really going to see Bruno come into his own there in terms of helping to set those up and being a catalyst for those. But what do you reckon, Daz?
Talking about finding a new way of playing, I think we've already done it. And people are completely missing the picture and they're blinded by the results that we've had. We played a different sort of setup against Man City in the Community Shield. And it was a 50-50 game. Man United was in that. It went to penalties, and penalties, no matter who you play or who you are, it's always 50-50. We did that with a false 9. We then went into the Fulham game and we could have had 4 or 5 goals in that game. We missed ridiculous sitters. And we looked for the first time under Eric Ten Hag, back-to-back games, like we had some sort of way of we wanted to play. We then went into the Brighton game and people see the result. They don't actually see that actually it was just fine margins. Brighton are a fantastic team. They're always well prepared. We was very unlucky not to be awarded that goal, although I do agree it touched his foot and it was offside, but it was really unlucky not to be given it. But again, that was another game where we could have scored, 2, 3 more goals. And actually, them first 3 games that we had of the season, we looked really good. And I felt if we'd have stuck with that, it was never going to get perfect overnight. Finding that style of play and then getting used to it for all of the players. I thought that worked. I thought it was working. And unfortunately, because Mason Mount got injured and we don't have another player that can press at the level that he can press in the final third, we resorted back to what we see last year against Liverpool. And guess what? Got the same sort of result that we expected against Liverpool. A 3-0 thrashing, yeah. 2 of them goals came from poor decisions by Casemiro, but we went back to what we was doing last year, and we got the similar result. I think in the first 3 games, if we would have won all 3 of them games, the Community Shield, obviously we won the Fulham game and we won the Brighton game, we would have gone into there 3 wins on the bounce, and people would have been saying there's actually a style of play there, because there was a style of play there. We could see that we wanted to pass out from the back slowly and patiently. You can see people are saying Marcus Rashford's lost his touch. No, I disagree. I think you can see that it's been coached, because Marcus Rashford, even without confidence, always still tries to take players on. He still tries to run down that left-hand side. He's not doing that at the minute. And I don't think that that's confidence. I think that's him listening to the way Erik ten Hag wants him to play. He wants Marcus Rashford to put that ball into Bruno, to put that ball into Mason Mount. And I thought he did that quite well in the first few games. I mean, he could have had two. Had Mason Mount not missed both his sitters against Fulham, Marcus Rashford could have had 2 assists in that game. Had we not missed our sitter in the Brighton game, Marcus Rashford could have had an assist in that game. That means we'd have been going into the Liverpool game with 3 assists. People would not be saying that he had. And I know what people are saying, what ifs, but Marcus Rashford can't finish them goals. He can only create them and put the ball in. And actually, he put him one-on-one with a goalkeeper. You can't ask for a better position to be put him one-on-one with a goalkeeper. The issue in them first 3 games is we just wasn't clinical enough. I think there is a style of play there, but having them 2 centre forwards, Xerxes and Haaland, I don't think either are ready yet. Not to lead the line to Manchester United. They're not at that calibre that we're used to seeing, like your Cantonas, your Van Nistelrooys, your Carlos Tevezes. They're nowhere near that yet. But what they are is they're both different centre forwards. Erik ten Hag can say, actually, we want a centre forward like Haaland today. We want a centre forward like Xerxes today. Just changing the tactical setup a little bit. I honestly think that false 9 with Bruno being up top, I think could evolve. And I've got a sneaky feeling that when Mason Mount's back, he will resort back to that, because I think Mason Mount was our best player in the first few games. I thought people didn't think he was productive, but you could see he wasn't there to be productive. He was there to press and force errors that then allowed them players around him to pick them errors up. Obviously, we was doing that because, we was getting the 2nd, 3rd, 4th balls, but that was because of the work Mason Mount was doing. And I actually really liked them. I mean, I once said to myself, in order for Man United to be successful, they've got to find a way at playing Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes together in the same team without having 2 attacking midfielders, because we're just not good enough defensively, and Casemiro was a little bit too old to be, running that position on his own, especially without a centre midfielder. I think having that false 9 and that attacking midfielder, I think worked really well. And it took a lot of pressure off Bruno, because Bruno is, for many years, has been the only productive player at Man United in terms of creating chances. And this just took a bit of pressure on. And I just felt that the Brighton game and the Man City game was just luck. I just felt we was on the wrong end of the luck in them 2 games. Losing, on penalties. And then, like I say, the Brighton game, I felt we could have been better, but I just felt it was a bit unlucky. But then that we need to be better evolves the more you play that system. And
it's
then
true.
obviously we would have had Ugarte to come into that system. There's players that was missing that you can bring into that system. Lenny Euro, we don't even know who's going to be our centre-backs, who our best 2 centre-backs are. I think in my head, I'd like to think it's Mateus De Ligt and Lisandro Martinez. But actually, that sneak peek of what we had from Lenny Euro, I thought that actually that was a really high level. And it was only a sneak peek from him. But, you know what I mean? And obviously, we've got Luke Shaw to come back into that as well. So the more you play that system that we was playing, the more you bring them players back into the fold. I think that would have evolved into a really, really good style of play. And it would have been unlucky because Fulham's never an easy game to play. Fulham's always awkward because they can beat any of the big 6, but they can also lose to the bottom 6. They're just an awkward team that you never know what result you're going to get. No one ever knows what result they're going to get. Then you have Brighton. Brighton are 100% a wild card for that Europa League spot. 100%. And then obviously you have Liverpool that, they had a new manager, but it was still a very settled team, still playing maybe 75% of Jurgen Klopp football with, that hint of Arne Slot ball in there. So it was an awful first 3 games to play. And I just think that
I'm going to jump in now, Daz, because we've ended up on a completely different pitch. It's like when you go bowling. We started off on lane 1, we've ended up on lane 4 over here. It was
Yeah.
on Bruno changing his role. Now we're back over those four. So we'll just drive it back over to Ben very quickly and just check if he's got anything he wants to add, because the point's been made. Anything that you agreed or disagreed with that you just wanted to end that subject on?
I think the overarching thing is that I don't have concerns over Bruno's chance creation or his level of technical ability, but I don't think the box formation we played against Brighton or Fulham is sustainable long term for Manchester United. And I also don't think that Bruno can be the sole press from that team. So there needs to be a system change somewhere along the line. What that is, I'm not entirely sure. The suggestion was that Bruno changes his role slightly. Will it happen? Not 100% on that either.
That'll be really interesting to see. I'm not going to lie. And I will throw this out there as well. But so when he does in the changing room, give the lads a motivational talk, they sure need it. I agree. Absolutely. When he gets going, it's very motivational indeed. We'll finish that one off with NT. He said it's pretty rare for us as football fans because we are to suddenly change our tune on a player like Mount without them scored or assisted or even put in an amazing performance. I'm not convinced that we're really that anti-Mount. I think the problem was just we didn't see him because he was injured so often. We didn't get the chance to see him do anything. So I don't think it was ever really a case of Mason Mount isn't a good footballer, although obviously Daz here completely disagrees with me there. But it was never about that. Not at all. I think it was really just about we need consistency. You need to have that ability. And we've always said about Bruno, the one thing that he's got above all the others, his best ability, is his availability. So there we go. Right, we're halfway through the show. We're 40 minutes in, so we're going to swing this back round and we're going to throw it over to Andrew Wall, which leads us into the second half of what could be quite an interesting debate. I'm really intrigued to see what the comments get to when we finally get to Daz's last one. But your one is a little bit more, you've put it quite timidly, to be honest with you, Andrew. I think we're going in really with sort of the softcore version, and we're going in hardcore very soon when Daz pops in with him. But genuinely, it is just a case of the next 5 games. So let's all know where you are with that. What's your point?
Just looking at the next 5 games, how that will shape our season and the future of Ten Hag as well. Yeah, United have got off to a poor start to the Premier League season, and then this month coming is going to be very important. So the Premier League table never lies, and just after 3 matches, we're not kind of off to a bit of a shocker, aren't we? We played 3, won 1, lost 2. 14th, and with a negative goal difference again. I thought, what a way to start the season, but already 6 points behind City, and 4 points, back off the top 4. So, which I say we're just 3 matches in, so there's no need for panic just yet, but we should have a clearer picture by the end of the month, where we lie, well, hopefully we do. And just looking at the next 5 fixtures, 3 of those are in the league, 2 away from home and 1's at Old Trafford, plus we've got the League Cup and the Europa League as well. So I think the next 5 games is going to be pivotal for Ten Hag as well. Well, he'll be hoping to get Luke Shaw and Højlund back from injuries and avoid any further setbacks over the international break as well. Looking at the best case scenario, hopefully it's 5 wins out of 5, and it puts Ten Hag back in a strong position. There's 9 points to it up for grabs in the Premier League, so which should correct the course. United's on, take us back hopefully into the top 6, hopefully, and also a victory at the end of the month, against our top 4 rivals, Tottenham, would count for a lot as well. And it's the only home league game at Old Trafford, so it would get us fans back on side again, because where I was standing on Sunday, there was a few grumblings about Ten Hag and and about the players as well. So just a few was not sure if Ten Hag's going to last much longer. But I say I'm not one of those yet. I'm not reached that point where I have with other managers where I'm known where I'm done with them. But the same, we got Palace away. That was the worst result last season, losing 4-0 there. I'm just like, if we can go there and grab a win at Selhurst Park, I think that will show some good progress as well. But hopefully we can get a comfortable win the League Cup as well. But we'll have to see. I mean, if it does the next 5 fixtures go all wrong, well, I mean, if we lose to Barnsley, well, God think that, well, it would really start to pile the pressure on him, and it also remove the possibility of obtaining, the first piece of silverware of the season. So, and we need to win our first game back, especially away at Southampton. It just reminds me of a couple of seasons ago. I think it was Ten Hag's first season. We lost the first 2, beat Liverpool in the 3rd game, and then our next game after the international break was Southampton away, which was also a Saturday at 12:30. So I thought it's a long away trip to the South Coast, and especially not ideal for those players returning from international duty as well. So it could be the worst case scenarios where we just take 4 points from these 3 games, which in the league it's not going to be good enough, and we've only got 3 so far. I just feel like this would leave Ten Hag under real pressure, and we've had 2 early defeats. So this month it's where United get themselves back on track and get the season up and running, or dare and say if it doesn't go well, then the spiral continues. The next 5 or so 10 games is going to really shape where we go. But as I said about last season, it was hell at times, but that FA Cup run sort of ended everything on a good note. It was like Ten Hag was getting us to that final and winning it. It was like if he hadn't, then he probably would have gone. But we're still fighting for silverware. So it's going to be an interesting month at United where what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely will. NT's just been here as well, getting Shaw and Malacia back. It's going to have high school reunion vibes. It's been so long since we've seen him in a United shirt.
Well,
Honestly, I've just had proof of life from him.
Well, Malassi's in the Europa League squad. I thought, he's still alive then.
Honestly, he's like a mascot at this point in time.
Well,
he's like a new Fred Red.
The last time was the FA Cup final. I remember he was there because he was lifting the trophy with the players as well. So I thought, you are around.
But he pops up every now and again. It's giving me, honestly, it's giving me Pogba vibes. His last season, and like the last thing we saw of Pogba was him sitting in a box, and you're just like, well, what's happened here? Paul Pogba sitting in a box. We haven't seen him on a football pitch for the last 6 months. But I mean, it's true. It's a big 5 matches. The game against Southampton, I think, Boxers put it down as a must-win game. I think you're probably right. I think that's a game we have got to go and boss and win and do well in. And I think we can. But it's a mixed bag. Like you say, we're going to league, then a cup, league, then a cup, and then league. And it's going to be a big September. The game against Barnsley, you should be winning. And it's going to be interesting to see whether he goes all out and puts a strong team out, or if he does the usual Carabao Cup of trying to rotate the players. Honestly, I don't think he will. I think he'll go strong again and try and make sure we're progressing in these, because he knows the importance of the cups, with the fact that it's quite unlikely that we'll go on to win the league. You've got Crystal Palace away, but that's never an easy one. We've struggled in that fixture perennially at times. FC20 in the Europa League, and again we lose that one. We've got another 7 games of that to go, so you can see where the negativity could start to come in just with 1 or 2 losses here. And then Spurs, I mean, we've already had enough of the Spurs women trying to come across, giving it the big one as if they've got some sort of rivalry with Man United women. The last thing we need is proper Spurs coming in trying to think they're a big club. Daz, where would you go with these next 5? Do you think they are vital? And I know you're going to steer it eventually into the...
Yeah, I think...
for this, how important are those 5?
In a bit, I will contradict myself, but I think that every game for Eric Ten Hag's a must-win game. Every single game's a must-win game. I think, we're 4, if you include the Community Shield, we're 4 games into the season, and we've lost 3 of them games, So I think people have got to respect that the fans are going to be really a bit arsey because, 4 games into our season and we've lost 3 games. Regardless to, like I say, how unlucky we was in certain games, end of the day, football's about fixtures. I think that I don't think Eric Ten Hag deserves to go, and I'll talk about why shortly. But I do think he has to go, and I think Ineos need to execute that really fast. And I was hoping they'd have done it. Like I said, I don't think he deserves to go, and I will always be Eric Ten Hag until he goes because I just back the manager. But I think rival fans, the media, even our own fans have condemned him already. That I don't think, even if he was to win the Europa League and finish in the top 4, fans would get behind that. People would then come out and say, "Yeah, but Liverpool's got a new manager this year." You know what I mean? A bit like when he finished third in the league. Yeah, but you only finished third because these were crap, and they were crap. So the reason he finished third. So I don't think it matters what he does. There's always going to be a negative spin on it. And I think for that reason.
What if we win all of those 5 games? If we win all 5 of those, get past Barnsley, smash 20, 9 points out of 9, all of a sudden on the cusp of the top 4 and knocking on the door.
I think then it'd only take one bad result for a lot of our own fans. It will take that. Say we'd have won our first 2 games, we'd have smashed Fulham, we'd have smashed Brighton and lost to Liverpool 3-0. People would then have said, yeah, but the first good team you came against, you lost. I think if we was to win every game and maybe then lose to Man City and Arsenal, I just think it's just going to take one bad result, and we are going to get another bad result. I'm sure during the course of the season, Man City's going to get a bad result. Arsenal will get a bad result. Liverpool will get a bad result because that's the Premier League. But I think us being Manchester United, I just think it's going to take one bad result, and I can see it coming in the month of September. Well, September, beginning of October. And again, fans will be back at that position where, he's got to go. He's never the right man. He's not this. And although I don't want him to go, and I don't think he should, I just think because of that negative stigma that I think is going to stick with him now, he's just got to go.
I mean, it's going to be interesting. Daz is saying there it's only going to be one more bad result. But, I mean, actually, if you take the 4 games, that's 3 bad results, whichever way we look at it. We should have won those games. We didn't. If City hadn't equalised, it wouldn't have gone to penalties. That would have been a Mickey Mouse trophy, but nonetheless. And you look at those other games, Brighton, Liverpool. I mean, I'm quite confident, quite content, quite happy. I can see the process work and all of that. But for you, Ben, what do you think about these 5 games? How important do you think they're going to be? Because I'm seeing it around, people talking about pressure potentially rising for Ten Hag with these results. Is that fair? Do you think he deserves to have that pressure? Because I feel like the project starts now. We sort of just forget the last 2 years and worry about now.
Yeah, I think ultimately Ineos have already said that the back of the man, the back in the process, all of that. But how much of that can we read in at this current point? Because ultimately, if you look at these next 5 games, if we win 4 out of 5, but we perform badly against Barnsley and Southampton, he's still going to be under pressure. And if you look a bit further down the fixture list, as we get into December, January, the fixtures are incredibly tough. And my worry is that if Erik Ten Hag's not in the top 4 at Christmas time, the pressure is going to be monumental on him at that stage. And you do have to separate. Last season, you could say the results weren't good enough and the performances weren't good enough. I think 2 games this season, we've said ultimately the performances were good. The result against Fulham was good. The result against Brighton was bad, but the performance was decent. But then we immediately swung back to the performance was terrible against Liverpool and the result was terrible. So he needs to find a balance in these next few games because ultimately, if you go into Southampton and you beat them 1-0, you beat Barnsley 1-0 at home, the United fans are not going to change the tune on Erik Ten Hag at that point. And I think the longer it goes on, the more justification it gives Ineos to just say, right, he's not our man. Let's get a new man in for January time. I don't think they'll ultimately pull the trigger until December or January. But if he's not in the top 4 at that point, I see it being very difficult for him to keep his job.
It's sensible. It's right down the middle. It's not outrageous. It's difficult to argue with. So a lot of us, Dan and a few of his mates were a little bit angry on the old group chat after the Liverpool game. And I think he had a good first season. I think his second season was all right. It's just he didn't we won a trophy, but the league form was always going to be tricky because there was just so many injuries. And we're going to get to Daz. I'll let Daz have his topic put through. Unless, Andrew, you've got anything to add on the 5-game conversation that's been had so far?
Well, I'll just say it's going to be a big month. So if it doesn't go, I say, I'm not at that stage. I've said this to friends as well. I'm not at that stage with Ten Hag yet. I'm just like when Mourinho was in charge. Was it the Liverpool game where we lost? I said that's it. He's done. Even with Ollie, that last game away at Watford, I thought for his own sanity he needs to go because those players weren't playing for him. But I've always backed the manager right into the very end. So with Ten Hag, I just think now it's his team now. Like the starting 11 on Sunday, I think it was 6 of his players, a couple of the academy players that come through the academy, and Fernandez and Dello who were bought before his time. So it's his team now. So he's been given the structure. So we've just got to see where it goes. So he's got to be given a chance. But I say we're just in the middle of a storm at the minute, and we've just got to get through it, and hopefully we'll come out the other side of it.
Well, let's hope so. It's a good job you didn't come out the other side when you were meeting Brian Robson, eh? That could have been a dangerous time. We'll have to tell Ben about that afterwards. He doesn't have a clue what we're talking about. A good one, though, Ben. You'll enjoy this. Daz, over to you, sir. You released a TikTok video and you decided that was what you wanted to talk about. So,
yeah, and I am going to contradict myself on what I've just said about how I do believe Erik Ten Hag still needs to go because of this stigma that's just going to stick around him, and I think that's going to be ultimately negative for Manchester United. But I do think that there is this horrible anti-Manchester United, anti-Ten Hag agenda. Some of the Manchester United fans are part of that problem, rival fans, pundits, the media. To give you some examples, I mean, they asked Manchester United to bring in a man that could discipline a squad that wasn't disciplined, and he gets criticised for the way that he treated Ronaldo, the way that he treated Jadon Sancho. I mean, there was parts last year where he dropped Marcus Rashford because, there was some teething issues with being late or missing training or going out on a night out. But he got criticised for that, we was told that he needs to bring in a style of play, but I remember one of his first interviews with Manchester United, and he said, you need to be patient. We need to bring in the right people that can implement this style of play. I mean, going back to Ralph Rangnick, well, what he said, open heart surgery, 11 players out of 11 need to be recycled with that team. Well, we've still got Luke Shaw in that team that wasn't his signing. We've still got Dello in that side that wasn't his signing. We've still got, I argue that Casemiro wasn't his signing. I think that was just, that had been agreed before him. We've still got Marcus Rashford that could, argue he needs to be recycled out. There's still players in this team, Harry Maguire, Lindelof, that needs to be recycled out in order for him to consistently have a style of play. Because the problem that you find is you get a style of play, 2 players get injured, and them 2 players could be your centre-backs. Well, instantly, you can't play high line anymore because it's Harry Maguire and Lindelof that have come in. You have to play a deep line, which means the midfield shape changes, the final third, everything changes. But I think he just needs time to be able to, and the media gave Klopp 3-4 years. They gave Arteta 3-4 years. Yes, they showed improvement within that 3-4 years, probably maybe than what, in terms of the style of play and the performances, maybe they did progress more than us in that 4 years, but their squads was not at the problem that yours was in. You know what I mean? Our squad was probably the lowest we've ever seen it from Manchester United in terms of discipline, quality, everything. The talk about, how he finished 8th in the league, completely ignoring the fact that we did have an injury crisis season, and Arteta and Klopp, both within inside their first 3 years, finished 8th in the league. But that was acceptable because trust the process, but that can't, that's not allowed for Manchester United. And, they're talking about, you've probably all seen this, that Arne Slot has beat Erik Ten Hag in his first 3 games. He's better, he's this, that, he's the other. Well, Erik Ten Hag beat Jurgen Klopp in his first 3 games. But he didn't just beat any Jurgen Klopp. He beat Liverpool's best team in 30 years. He beat the reigning Premier League champions before they had their injury problems that year. Last year, Klopp couldn't beat him. You know, we got a result in every single one of them games, but people don't talk about that because Arne Slot beat us in his first 3 games, and he looks, you know, not forgetting that Arne Slot actually inherited a team that could challenge for the title if they stay fit. You know, I think there's just, and the other things, like people said, Manchester United need to stop bringing in your Angel Di Marias, your Casemiros, your Ibrahimoviches, you know, these big names on big money. So we then start bringing in your Lisandro Martinez's that nobody really had heard of, your militias that nobody had really, you know, trying to find them hidden gems in the market. And some of them have done quite well. But we're getting criticised, you know, because the unheard of players and the nobodies, and Man United, Adam Marty have fallen because we're not bringing in decent players anymore. We can't attract decent players. But you guys told us to stop doing that. You know what I mean? You told us to stop going for them, you know, marquee players. Because I do think Man United, because of the money, could still, you know, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, even going really petty to the leaky roof, we get loads of stick because our roof leaks. I actually did some research today. Brighton's roof leaks, Luton's roof leaks. There's Nottingham Forest roof leaks. I know they're smaller clubs than us, but nobody ever mentions that their roof leaks.
No, but then
But
we are
they
meant to be
mention
the
ours
theatre of
every
dreams,
day.
not the theatre of
You know
wet
what I
dreams.
mean? And it's just petty stuff, and it is the anti-Manchester United agenda. Even down to, we've seen this with Jamie Carragher and Graham Souness, and I know there's always going to be banter because they're Liverpool people and we're Manchester United, so there's always going to be a bit of level of banter and, yeah, they're crap and we're good sort of conversation. But the unfair treatment that we saw on Lisandro Martinez, you know, he's too small defenders never make it, completely ignoring the fact that Cannavaro never won a Ballon d'Or for being a little bit shorter than Lisandro Martinez. But Lisandro Martinez came in and actually he fits in the Premier League quite well. You know, he doesn't stand out as a bad player, and I'd argue he would go into every single Premier League team. Maybe not over Saliba, but I think he would over Gabriel. You know, maybe not over Ruben Diaz, but I think he'd get in over Aki, you know, or John Stones. I think he would make every single Premier League team. Maybe not Liverpool over Virgil van Dijk, but I think he would get in over Konate. You know what I mean? But nobody's come out and have said we're wrong. You know, no apology from Graham Souness that he got it wrong. And we've recently seen that he's come out and he's had this mad talk about Kobe Mainoo. But why are you not talking about any other players at any other club? You know what I mean? Why is it always Manchester United? Why is that acceptable that it can only be negative when it's United? You know what I mean? And I just think it's just this mad agenda against Manchester United. And I just think it's wrong.
Well, I think it's a very, very interesting question that you ask. And, you know, I've often got frustrated with Manchester United in terms of the fans, specifically on things like Twitter, on TikTok, and all these sorts of things. Easy to find them. And I think it's got something to do with United being the most well-supported team in the world. Yeah. When you look at it, there are, and again, it's never going to be exact because they can't ask everybody, but in 2013, they did a survey asking how many Manchester United fans they were, and it came to 659 million people. Now, there's only about 7 billion people in the world, so that's a lot of people supporting one football club. In a few years earlier, 2007, they estimated it at about 333 million people. Now, we never get political on this show, so don't get all upset with me when I get to this, but it will make sense when I get there. It's a bit like Brexit. Brexit was 52-48, and you've hit a point in Brexit where if something's going good for it, you can have the people that voted leave going absolutely crazy, saying, see, I told you it was brilliant, it was going to be great. And if it was going wrong, you get the Remainers coming in, going, no, see, told you it was rubbish, it was never going to happen. And I feel like that's where we are at Manchester United. You're never going to get just one view. You're never going to get just one opinion. But the drama that you've got is that 659 million people aren't going to agree. Yeah. And because they don't agree, you're going to end up with those sorts of dramas. Now, we've said it on this channel. We said to Ben today when he came on, we'll take any opinion. It doesn't matter what your opinion is. Everyone's got the right to have one. But what we want is that people are able to articulate it, to explain their reasoning behind it, because that's what creates a debate. That's what gets a discussion going. But I think sometimes we just see that too often, that it's just reactionary. We saw it with the Mason Greenwood stuff. There were people supporting him, people not supporting him. It was so divisive. And everything is Glazers in, Glazers out. There's a lot of people not talking at all. I'm one of them. I very rarely on Twitter go on to talk about Manchester United in that way. I'd end up in far too many arguments. I wouldn't be able to carry on doing any job because I'd get the sack probably. So I'll end up arguing with somebody too much. And I just think that's the thing. And if you're sitting there, you look at some content creators that are out there. If you were looking at a football club that you wanted to do content on in order to get yourself money, it's United you're going to pick, innit? Week in, week. And this is why, shameless plug for us, this is why I love our channel, because we're not interested in clickbait. We're not sitting there going, let's just throw Casemiro under the bus and have a complete go at him. It's an actual discussion. We're not sitting there shouting out with, titles that make you want to click so you can have an argument and do all of that. It's not what it's about. It's just about a discussion like going down the pub. And it's frustrating for me that this is all we see is a load of people putting out there just stupid, argumentative points for the sake of being argumentative. And that's what people like Graham Souness will do. If he sits there and goes, Man United are doing really well, nothing's going to come out. But if he turns around and says this player's crap, that's headline news all over the place. People are going to put that out on there. The United fans, and we do it for them. We throw it out there. Look at what this Muppet's just said. And now all of a sudden, he's still a household name. And that's going to be important for people like Graham Souness, because you look at people like Alan Hansen before him, Mark Lawrenson before him. I'm not specifically picking on them because they're Liverpool players, but they were always on Match of the Day when I used to watch it. And they get palmed out of it. Matt Letizia, Paul Merson is going to eventually get there. All of these players get farmed out and get to an age where they get kicked out of it because new people are taking over. The problem you've got is everybody's going to have a view. And so because they've got it, they know that they can get United fans to click on everything that's to do with Manchester United. And exactly this, Andy, they're just sensationalist. I don't believe for 1 minute that half the people that are on TalkSport really believe what they're saying, but they know if they say stupid stuff about Manchester United, they're going to get people listening to them and arguing. So I feel like that's what it is, but that doesn't disagree with what you're saying, because that then creates a media circus around the club.
I think I get that, but I think it's the United fans, that level of United fans that we see. I mean, we still see it. One of the guys in the chat earlier today just actually put that Haaland needs to be more productive when he comes back. He put something like that, and I'm like, he's the most productive teenager in the Premier League, most productive centre forward teenager in the Premier League. Under a certain age. No, you know what I mean? And it's just what bothers me is the fact that the United fans are singing that same tune that Eric Ten Hag has to go because, but then there's a different set of rules for other people, and it's the same United fans that complain that we went 6 years without a trophy, but Eric Ten Hag has brought 2 in 2. 100% I'm annoyed that it's not a Premier League and a Champions League, 100%. But as a Man United fan, I think, especially now, 10 years post Alex Ferguson, you have to swallow that bit of pill, and I admit that we're not that team. Right now, winning an FA Cup and a Carabao Cup is considered a successful season. That doesn't mean...
The last thing I would point out with that, though, on that, is that when you're talking about 659 to 333 in 6 years, you're looking there, again, an incredibly productive team. You're looking at an Alex Ferguson side from 2007 to 2013 when that jump was made. And you look at all of the recent history, the treble, the fact that we'd knocked Liverpool off their perch. I'd argue, Ben, that what we've got is a generation of Manchester United fans who are spoiled. They just don't know what it is to have Manchester United not winning because they're not used to it and they're not getting what they're expecting. It's too easy to whinge. I'd liken them to teenagers in their room who get to the age of 17, 18 and realise they've got to start paying rent and start buying their own trainers and stuff because their parents aren't going to do it anymore. My nephew is just the same. Well, my dad never pays for me to go on holiday anymore. Now I've turned 18 and I've got a job. I wonder why that might be. maybe he's expecting you to pay for it because you're earning money and you're not going to school anymore. And there's that little whinge about it. Is that kind of where we are because things have changed a little bit? I mean, how do you see it? Do you agree with what Daz is saying?
I think Bain took the comment right out of my mouth. Hated, adored, never ignored. That is that's all you need as a strapline to this conversation, really, is that's it. You've got an unbelievable like mixing pot of everything coming together at the perfect time in terms of, like you've just said, people my age, I'm 29, so the majority of my life prior to these last 10 years or so was United winning. You've also got the combination of salty Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea, Man City fans, whoever it might be, that have had their childhoods ruined by United. And it's all accumulated when social media is blowing off. The easiest thing to do is, we do TikTok. You know that if you post an overreactionary video, you're going to get more views, you're going to get more engagement, you're going to get more comments. And it's so easy to just hone in on that nowadays, rather than trying to sit back and actually extract what's actually happening. And if you look at it from that point of view, United still aren't doing well. We still aren't performing well on the pitch. We still aren't doing this, and this right off the pitch. But ultimately, it just generates clicks wherever you go. And I think that's ultimately it. But hated, adored, never ignored.
I think you're right. And what Daz was saying there about the anti-Ten Hag rhetoric, do you think he deserves some of the criticism that's coming his way? Or do you think some of it is overreactionary?
I think it's always a mix. I think we've looked at Ten Hag and we've seen what he's done previously at Ajax, and that is the pinnacle of what we want in terms of beautiful football, going far in competitions, winning league titles, and that is what we want translated into Manchester United. But ultimately, that isn't easy to do. But I think he has also fallen under his own rules in terms of he's not followed his principles. He went away from his principles early on. I know it wasn't going to work early on. We saw that Brentford game away, and he went away from it because he knew De Gea couldn't play out. But I would have liked to see him just stick to his philosophy and just drive it home, because ultimately he's still in a position now where he could lose his job and he's had to change his style. If he'd have stuck to what he'd known and he'd have said, when they offered him Casemiro, he should have turned around and said, I don't want Casemiro. I wanted Frankie de Jong. If we don't get de Jong, go and get him next season and we'll play with what we got. I would have liked to have seen that, just to see a bit of character stick back.
As well,
I understand
Ben,
what position is.
It doesn't help that, and I don't know if you three agree with me on this. It doesn't come across as a likable character, and dare I say the forbidden words. I think I actually like Arnie Slot. He comes across as a nice fella, not as a football man.
We're going to have to kick him out there. He can't say that sort of stuff. I'm joking.
I think he comes across as a nice fella, and I think the players will breathe off that. And I think Klopp, in a lot of ways, did the same thing. And I think if he goes, and I think this is why Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was somewhat successful, because he was a likeable chap. People liked him. The fans loved him because of his history with the club. And I think we need a sense of that. And I don't think Erik Ten Hag, I think that's the only criticism for him from me, is he's done nothing to connect with the fans.
Well, you speak about connecting with the fans, Daz. You're absolutely losing the room saying things like that. Andrew, come on, mate. Bring us home. Is it all fair? You've been a United fan for a ridiculous amount of time, and you're a season ticket holder. I know I bring it up all the time, and I know I absolutely rag on you as much as I can. But genuinely, like you've been there. You're in the cauldron every single week. You see what's going on. You hear what's going on. You can see the reactions of the fans and how they are. First of all, it's fair to say, isn't it? You can't judge Manchester United and its fan base based on what you see online. You do have to have that element of understanding, not just that match-going Reds are going to be better than the ones that don't, because I've only been to a few. It's not that. But it is a very different atmosphere. You're not going to get the level of debate and argument that you get online at Old Trafford. It's a more muted sort of discussion. And it's only when you see things like United potentially joining the European Super League that all of a sudden all those voices come together and everyone's like, now we're not having that. And that's when you know it's really bad. And that's why I always argued, even during the Glazers and all of those protests and things that happened, it was big, but it wasn't big enough because there wasn't that many people out there. Whereas for the Super League, it absolutely was. They were like, people would have just, I'm not going to watch it. That's it. We're not going to buy a ticket. It's game over if you do this. So there is a difference between that. But it is hard, isn't it? Like as is saying, there is a ridiculous narrative around this football club. We've spoiled so many childhoods. It's kind of coming home to roost a little bit now, isn't it? Because that hatred is really just battering us.
I was going to say, has Beanie put there, hated adore, but never ignored. You know, United is written about daily, you know, and the media agenda, sometimes it's so blatant, the majority, you know, don't attempt to conceal what they're doing, but there was some out there, you know, just out there for some cheap clicks, you know, on what they write, but there's some good journalists out there that write real good stuff about United, and are doing it with the best in their tensions as well, so it just, I don't know, sensationalism sells as well, you know. And like Ten Hag said after Sunday, said there's that, I think that was the headline, I'm no Harry Potter. So that was a headline in itself, but I think that was more a poke at the media. It said, well, so I think I was reading earlier, you know, Sir Alex after was at a press conference, he said, oh, I'm fed up of having to read papers and things I've said, and I know I've said, and you've completely twisted it and lied, you know, and saying to the media, your job is to tell the truth. That is your job as a journalist. And if you don't do that, you're in the wrong job. So, but in Fergie's time, he had to get over, you know, the media against him, and also when supporters weren't in favour of him, you know, in the late 80s. But by the end, Fergie had nothing left to prove. It was like he'd done everything with Manchester United, so he could do whatever he wanted. So, but it just, you know, with Ten Hag as well, he's now with 3 games into the league. Yes, you could argue the neither are a bit, you know, getting a bit more sharper, but the scrutiny like no other. You know, being the manager of Manchester United, it's pressure in itself. So, but I just think, you know, looking back, there's no denying last season the league, you know, capitulation in the league, and you know, an 8th place finish could have cost him his job, but I think thanks to the FA Cup and in the Ineos's review, they decided, well, we'll stick with who we've got, and now you look, and now and he's into his 3rd season and he's won 2 trophies, which is one more than Arteta has done at Arsenal. So no one's saying Arteta, you know, Lord Arteta more over Ten Hag. So, but according to some, this is irrelevant. You know, people like to look back at Ollie, and you know, and I think he made the statement, "Trophies masking the progression at the club." But I love Ollie to bits. He's a legend. He's welcome back, you know, any time. But and like I say, I thought his corner right until the end, until that last game against Watford, where I thought the players would, you know, throwing him under the bus, and he kind of said it half time, said whoever wants to play plays, if you don't then, but I think my time's up. But I just think success can be measured in multiple ways, you know. Yes, some of the, you know, over the last couple of years it's been frustrating what we've been seeing, but trophies certainly matter as well. So there's those that want to sort of rewrite history, you know, and some would like, so let's go back to the times where Ollie, but then use the lack of silverware against him as well. So it's just, I think Ollie put it best. He said, referencing the port of a stable culture at the club, and I feel like Ten Hag is, I think, maybe starting to get that as well, because I remember when Ollie came in, was initially caretaker, and then he had to pick the club off the floor. The way Mourinho left it, it was just like the ship was sinking, and it was like, you know, people were not in the best of moods, you know, just like Ollie came and lifted all the spirits up. So, but I just feel like we've just got to focus on the here and now. Like the Liverpool game, you know, wasn't good enough, but it was embarrassing, and schoolboy errors were made, but we'll move on from it. But I think Ten Hag said we have to improve, you know, we have to get better. That's not just him, that's the players too as well. So it's just, us fans of United, yeah, we can, like in the stands, I grumbles on Sunday, and I was like, I might necessarily agree with them, but every supporter has a right to their opinion, whether you travel home and away, you know, or sit watching at home at TV or down the pub as well. So your opinion is relevant. You know, I think social media has exacerbated a lot of things. So just cutting through all that noise and just getting to, you know, the heart of everything. So it's just the media, you know, it's in some ways it's a good thing, in some ways, you know, negativity sometimes outweighs the good things that are being said about Man United, and there's so many good things we can say about Man United as well. So, but yeah, it's
It is a tricky one, Andrew. You're not wrong, and I do think you're right, and I think that's a good place to end that. Really, is the whole idea that United are just absolutely massive. No matter what we look at, everyone does have the right to their opinion, but it's again also just that understanding that at the end of the day we're supporters, and you know the key really is in the title, supporters, not ones that should be trying to drag the club down. And I'll finish it off with a video that I was watching of Peter Schmeichel. I think he was on, he must have been just after the Liverpool game on one of the other channels. And he spoke about Sir Alex being seen in the crowd. And he actually looked quite emotional. He was going, I could actually cry. That you think it was only 10, 11 years ago that he left, and you saw all the work and everything that he's put into it. And he says, imagine what that must be like at the moment for Sir Alex to be sat there knowing the empire and what he'd built and what he'd left for the club. And to see after 10, 11 years, just how all of that had been sort of razed to the ground. And it all comes from, and I will argue this point until the day that I die, the fact that the manager is no longer the most important person at the football club, because there's too many other people around them that are willing to just throw them under bus at the immediate moment it happens. And as soon as that occurs, you never would have done that. These players would not have got away with any of this under Alex Ferguson.
I don't think as well the media wouldn't have got away with it either. The media wouldn't have got away with this anti. I think Alex Ferguson had that way of controlling his players, controlling the media in a way that he was the most important man. He was a sort of a no-nonsense manager when it came to the press, wasn't it? And I think
they played along with him.
Mourinho were too easily bullied.
I think they played along with it a bit, the media. I'm not convinced he was just completely, because like Andrew says, in the late 80s, he was like denigrated. He could have absolutely been gone very, very quickly. But again, if you're successful, they'll help you out. But the minute he started to drop, it goes a bit wrong.
Do you think the last 10 years, Ben, really quickly, do you think the last 10 years of not winning anything makes Alex Ferguson even bigger manager than he was? The fact that we've had one of the best coaches in Louis van Gaal, we had the successor in David Moyes, we've had the ex-player who was his protege, he was coached under Alex Ferguson, we've had Jose Mourinho, the special one that wins everywhere he goes, but none of these have been able to come close to winning a title. Does that make Manchester United and Alex Ferguson bigger than they ever was? I know there was you could argue he's already the greatest English manager of all time because of what he did, but the fact that no other manager could get close to any success at this football club, does that make him a bigger manager?
Yeah, I think ultimately Sir Alex is always going to be the pinnacle for United fans. People are going to argue that Pep is emulating what he did. There's so much behind what's going on at Man City that I don't think it's a relevant conversation. But yeah, definitely the last 10 years, we look at the struggles we've had. We went through them years with Ferguson when we started winning stuff up to the point he left. And essentially it was just, if we lost the game at home under Sir Alex, United fans were fuming. If you look at the situation we've been in for the last 10 years, it's nowhere near in that position. But I feel like some of the fans are still caught in that mindset of we deserve to win every trophy. We deserve to win every game. We go into the games against Fulham at home, and I still do it. I have to kind of twist my mindset in terms of we should just be rolling over Fulham 3 or 4-0. And in reality, that's just not football. That's not how it goes. And I think football has changed in terms of the margin for error is a lot smaller in terms of if you're not on it against Brighton away, you lose. If you're not on it against whoever it might be, you lose. And I think that's the difference we're seeing. But we've got maybe the hindrance that we were so successful for so long that we've got a different mindset to a lot of the other teams.
I think for a lot of fans as
Sorry,
well,
Daz,
that success is all they know, isn't it?
Daz, I want to extend the question because I'm intrigued. I've argued for a long time that actually the reason we're in the situation we're in as a football club was the sacking of David Moyes. Now, I know there's a lot of people that will go out there and say he was a rubbish manager, but that guy was signed on a 7-year contract and he was given about 7 months. And the minute that went, it was like game over, because that seemed to be the point when we decided we'd gone from supporting a manager for a ridiculously long amount of time to immediately trying to chase success. Because we'd finished outside the top 4, we can't have that. Every other manager has been given another year to try and do that. Do you think that the David Moyes sacking effectively then put us in a situation where the board themselves had already said, we're just going to be chasing the success here, and we didn't think about what Fergie said, which was support him, give him the time that he needs, and we didn't. And because we moved away from that, the manager being the central figurehead, it just sort of went a bit wrong, and it all then became just about the results, and it was too easy to sack a manager if things were going wrong.
Yeah, I think I always remember Alex Ferguson saying that, in his speech, this is the new manager, you've got to get behind him, support him, be patient and all of this. And we wasn't, literally the last request of the great man, and we disregarded it. What I'd have liked to have seen happen, and I think if we could turn back the clock, all of the relevant people at Manchester United from, Charlton to Alex Ferguson himself would potentially have gone down that route. I would have liked Alex Ferguson to potentially have stepped down the way he did and moved into a director of football role for a few years just to oversee David Moyes, to basically just say to the fans, I'm still around, I'm still looking out for your best interests, I'm still protecting you against the Glazers. And, and then after the 3 years said we then need a director of football, found, the best in class, and then Alex Ferguson, goes off into the sunset, sort of what he's done. I just think because if he was in part of that club for so long, he did almost everything. He had his eyes in, the recruitment, the scouting, the academy. He was part of everything. He sort of saw everything, a bit like managers used to in the 50s, 60s and the 70s. He was that sort of figurehead. To then leaving and realising that Manchester United can't be run by one man. It's too big of a football club. But they basically gave the club to David Moyes without a director of football, without a technical director, without all of these people that he probably did need to support him, because there was no way any manager, Pep Guardiola included, could have come in and done the job that Alex Ferguson did. They would have needed other people around him to help support him. I think, in hindsight, I would have liked to have given David Moyes more time. 100%. I think he deserved more time, and I think Alex Ferguson deserved the respect of finding his own successor, to give that successor a bit of time. I think it was just because we were so successful for so long, our mindset, like Ben says, was very much in, we are a successful fan base, we will win trophies, to actually realising that, oh my God, that's no longer happening, sack the manager. You know what I mean? I think you've just got to accept that. There was a big period between Matt Busby and Alex Ferguson. The chances is the new Matt Busby or the new Alex Ferguson will come. No doubt in my mind, Manchester United will be a successful team again. They will, they will be that top club on the pitch again. But we might need to wait for the next Matt Busby, the next Alex Ferguson to come along. But yeah,
Well, I think we'll let Ben finish off on that one, because I'm intrigued to know what you think about it. Because, Daz has just said there about, no other manager could do that. But, Alex Ferguson was pushing 70 and he was able to run a football club by himself. Is there no way that David Moyes could have done that?
I've probably got a different opinion on this, in that I think the manager after Sir Alex Ferguson should have been Jose Mourinho. And ultimately, looking back on what happened with Jose and what he did at the club, people will say, what's he talking about? Why is that a thing? But I think with the squad that Ferguson left behind, and the personality that Mourinho had, we could have had a bit of. Essentially, we went from Sir Alex, who was up here, to David Moyes down here. I think Mourinho would have provided like a bit of a plateau in between, where I think we would have probably won a trophy under Mourinho. What that might have been, I'm not sure. And then that would have allowed the fans to kind of transition to this period of, look, we know Mourinho is not going to be here for 20 years, but we've got Mourinho for 2 or 3 years. We might win a trophy, and then you move on to your project manager after that. I think going straight for Moyes and saying we're going to give him 7 years and then binning him off straight away, you're asking for trouble from that point.
To question what you've just said, Ben,
Guys,
really
we're gonna have to
quickly,
stop,
and
mate.
again, this is the
Guys,
forbidden
we've got to
fruit.
stop. It's
So
been
this
like
is the forbidden fruit. Would you have took Klopp? I know at that time he was just a German manager in Germany. Do you think Klopp could have been the man if we could have lured him to be that 10-year manager? Because it was arguably he could have been a 10, 20-year manager at Liverpool. Would you have took him knowing now what you know, having what he's done at Liverpool?
I would have had Klopp for the personality, the tactics, but I do think it'd have ultimately failed because of the structure. I think it all comes back to that structure. I think the only manager that could have won a Premier League title in the last 10 years would have been Jose Mourinho, and it would have been the couple of years after Sir Alex. That's it for me.
Fair enough. Good stuff. Listen, it's been a good one. You are all going to get a chance to speak one more time to throw out your socials. So if people want to go and argue with Daz about who should have been the manager, he'll happily do that on your lives, where we've got a lot more time for you to sit there and do those sorts of things. But Daz, where can people find you? Where do they need to find your TikTok?
Over on TikTok, that's Stay Controversial. You'll normally find me where the arguments are.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we're after. Ben, did you get yours?
Yeah, Ben Talks Football. Yeah, I do videos daily on a variety of stuff, mainly Manchester United. So yeah, check it out.
There we go. So search for that. If that doesn't work, it's Ben Wilson 217. So try that if the Ben Talks Football.
Oh, did you? I don't know how to find that. But
You
yeah,
messaged me, mate, and it came up on there. So I thought I'd best look just to be sure, because if people try and find them and can't, they'll be all upset. So there we go. That's where we find them. And Andrew, we know you don't do too much TikTok, but tell us a little bit about what you do, your writing and stuff if you need to. Tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, obviously you can find me on X or Twitter or whatever they want to call it now. There's my handle. And yeah, so I do some writing for Stretford Paddock, so you can find me over on there as well.
Beautiful. Good stuff. Don't bother following me. It's not worth it. But if you are on TikTok, please push the button. We're on 796. It is agonizingly close to us being able to push the live button and going and just, rocking up and arguing with Daz just for the sake of it and then running out and sulking if we really wanted to. So please, if you haven't already, get on that. It's been a pleasure. We've really enjoyed it. We are going to be back on Saturday. I'm not entirely sure. We've got 2 contributors. I'm looking for a third one. And if the person that I want comes on, it's going to be a nice show because we're going to be going back to our roots, which would be very interesting. But if they don't, then I'm going to have to find somebody else. So fingers crossed they say yes. If not, there's plenty of other people to choose from. But I really want this one because I think it would go well. So we'll see. But that's on Saturday night. So keep yourself and your diaries free. Thank you very much for everyone here. It's been great. Brilliant in the chat. Superb. TikTok topic 2. Done. Sorted. Brilliant. Well done, everyone. See you on Saturday.